Can't you hear the whispers in the wind? Can't you see the flowers wilting? Don't make me say I told you so. I told you so. And the church bells stopped ringing, and the dogs, they don't bark, and the laughter is silent. I don't wanna say I told you so. Something is wrong, I can feel it. Something is wrong, can't you see it? Can't you see the streets all empty now? Can't you see the speech is stolen? Don't make me say I told you so. I told you so. And the church bells stopped ringing, and the dogs, they don't bark, and the laughter is silent. I don't wanna say I told you so.
Hi, good afternoon. Did you know who that was? Do you know? Should we have a look? Who this delightful chap is? Give you a bit of an insight into what we're doing today.
My name is Tim McBride. I'm the student body president at American University. I'm proud to join over 100 other student body presidents to sign this letter and send the message to the president and congressional leaders that bold action is required, and required now. Our economic recovery and our long-term fiscal...
Anyway, who needs to listen to that guy? Not me. Okay, so that's Tim McBride. He now goes by Sarah McBride. And what we're going to watch in a minute is two older middle-aged men getting really, really excited about meeting him. So anyway, that was Tim McBride in 2014. And then 13 years ago, so 2014, and then the next year, by 2015, this is what he looked like, although by the looks of this, so that video was 2014, and then the next one is 2013. So maybe he was, I don't know, cross-dressing at home at that time. Let's have a look. I'm just going to double check when that video was. One moment. Yeah, 14. So sorry, my mistake. 14 years ago, that was the first video, and then this is him 13 years ago. So within a year, he'd had a bit of a transformation, did old Tim. There we go.
A daughter, a volunteer, a neighbor.
A daughter. He's a daughter. He's already a daughter by now. So this is his. You know, he just couldn't keep that fetish under wraps anymore.
Native Delawarean, and I'm transgender. I currently go to school in Washington, D.C., where I'm protected from discrimination.
So anyway, he was friends with Biden's son. He's a very well-connected young man, and now he's in Congress, and he's quite a powerful man. Now, I first encountered Mr. Tim McBride. I'd already seen him. I knew that he was working for the Human Rights Campaign Group. One of the things they did is they campaigned for prisoners, male prisoners, violent criminals, to go into the female estate. It was very widely known, 2018, 2019. So I went to America early 2019, and I was in Capitol. And at the time when I was in Capitol, I was with Julia Long, and what we were doing is we were knocking on doors and having conversations with staffers connected with representatives, and we were talking to them about the Equality Act back then. And the Equality Act in the United States, part of that was going to make it like you didn't know what a woman was. Okay, so anybody that said they were a woman, gender identity, and actual women were going to be equal under the law. And if you just said I'm trans, I'm a woman, then you were a woman and you were a woman in law. And so this is one of the things that Wolf and myself and Julia Long, that's the sort of conversations that we were having at the time. I happened to see Tim McBride. He was giving some sort of interview, and then we saw him in a room, an empty room, where he was with somebody I'm imagining worked for him. They just had a conversation with one of the Kennedys, a ginger one. I don't know which one, but it was a guy who was hosting this trans kid stuff. And in that room, what we saw when we walked past is a woman talking about her 4-year-old being trans. So this was 2019. I saw Tim McBride, and I said to the women I was with, the Americans, is it legal to go in and ask him questions? They said, yeah. I said, what could happen to me? They said, not much. And so Julia Long and myself, we went into ask Tim McBride some questions, and I will show you what that looked like. Let me just make sure you can see it properly. There we go. Let me just find it. Can I just word to the wise here? If you're going to do a little kind of video, yeah, I've not aged so well. Don't do it from underneath your face, because it's just not a good look. So always be mindful with camera angles.
Talk to Sarah McBride.
Look, he's with someone else. They're looking at photos about this event they've just had. The HRC, the Human Rights Campaign Group in America, terrible organization, terrible. That grotesque man, Charles Clymer, works for them. It's absolutely full to the brim of AGPs. And what those AGPs want to do is totally annihilate all women's rights.
Yeah, this one. I think that one's
Excuse me, are you prepared to listen to the concerns of women about the Equality Act? And about...
Can I just say, I just want you to remember the words he's next going to say in this interview about dialogue and about speaking and answering questions.
Yeah, this one. I think that one's
Excuse me, are you prepared to listen to the concerns of women about the Equality Act? And about why you're okay? Yeah, so am I. I want to know why this person is advocating to remove the safety for women and girls. Why do you want to do that?
Why are you championing the rights of men to access women in women's prisons and rape and sexually assault them, as has recently happened in the United Kingdom?
Why don't you care about lesbian girls at 14 having double mastectomies? Why don't you care about that, Sarah? This is Sarah McBride. He gets paid probably quite a lot of money to lobby the government to try and make sure that women and girls have absolutely no right to any space anymore. Shame on you.
Sarah, yesterday I listened to mothers weeping over the fact that their daughters, teenage daughters, had had their breasts sliced off and radical hysterectomies involving removing their womb and ovaries. And
He doesn't care, look.
Would you like to speak to those mothers and tell us why you're championing an Equality Act that will ensure that a lot more of this happens to young lesbians, Sarah?
Tell the entire LGBT community how much you hate lesbians, Sarah.
Well, I don't know that Sarah does have
See, look.
I think Sarah just did that already in the interview outside. We hear you very clearly, Sarah. We hear your hatred of lesbians very clearly.
I'm so sorry about that. I've obviously got some sort of cards on my let me just set this up as well. That's not what I want. I want this. There we go. So we've got this ready. Good. Okay. So anyway, so that's who he is. He's quite a loathsome character. And now he's on with Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell. Please, I beg of you, just have a look at these little men's faces where they're so excited. They're so excited. I can't work out whether it's a Gamp thing. I don't know whether they're just so overly excited about the fact that women are going to be really pissed off with them kind of getting all aroused about Tim McBride. I don't know what it is, but it's quite amusing to see just how excited they are by this bloke that they're interviewing.
Welcome to The Rest is Politics Leading with me, Rory Stewart.
And with me, Alistair Campbell.
Look at their faces!
And we are absolutely thrilled to be with somebody who's probably going to get really irritated when I interview her as
They're giddy, aren't they? They're giddy. It's weird.
the first transgender congresswoman in the United States of America, because that is how she gets introduced wherever she goes. And eventually the world will get fed up with that and move on. But that is a fact. But Sarah McBride is still in her mid-30s. She's a Democrat from Delaware. She's somebody who has been a state senator.
Biden and Biden's son and Sarah McBride were good mates. Like, there is so much linkage with what Obama was doing and how connected Biden was clearly with Obama. And I don't think you can discount sort of some of the power here and what was going on and the brokering of rights. Because Obama, you have to remember, Obama really did in 2009. Obama and then Macron over in Europe, they both went on a bit of a funny mission in obliterating women's rights, erasing what it meant to be a woman, and all those sorts of things. Those two men are sort of the architects. Now, there's many reasons that might be. We can all think of like funny ones why that might be, but there are, there's obviously a power vacuum, and that's what these men did. And Sarah McBride just happens to be really good friends with Biden's son. I think it's the dead one.
She's now in Congress, and she's absolutely perfect for this podcast. One, because she's an
100%. I will agree with him. 100%. Sarah McBride is absolutely perfect for this podcast because these two men are complete bellends.
avid listener, she keeps telling us. But secondly, because she lives her politics by trying to disagree agreeably, even on an issue so close to her heart, which is transgender and the way that it's been weaponized particularly by many on the right. So
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
thank you for being here. It's lovely to see you in person.
So tell us a little bit about your, give us your sort of 15-year-old self.
Well, I was a young boy with a huge porn collection.
We'd met you age 15, what would we have thought? Would we have liked the 15-year-old version of you?
I feel like you and I might have gotten along. I'm not sure if Alistair and I would have gotten along. You might not have liked me. I was pretty nerdy, pretty consumed with books about history and politics.
Yeah, like most young women, really consumed with books about history. So female.
I'm not, what am I hearing here?
I think that you're pretty cool. But first of all, it's just wonderful to be here. Both of you are very cool. I didn't mean to insult Rory right away.
This is going really badly. You see, because the thing is, I really want to be cool and he really wants to read books. So you've managed to insult both.
Seriously, look at them. Look at them. It's weird. It's really weird. I think we all have to acknowledge it's weird.
Exactly.
Well, that's a great way to start because it is an honor to be with you both. I am a long-time listener.
I just want to say, just as you watch this, I am going to keep interrupting it. Just as you watch, I just want you to remember the reason we're all in the trouble we're in is because of this supposedly nice, reasonable bloke in a dress or in a tasteless trouser suit, right? This is the reasonable face of, hey, I don't want to upset anyone. I just want to pee in peace. I mean, all over a woman's toilet seat, granted, but I'm, I respect women, and we just want to be safe too. Just that's the Debbie Hayton, that's the Stephen Whittle, that's the all the main voices. That's the Munro Bergdorf, although obviously Munro's teeth don't fit anymore, so it's a bit more difficult to understand him. But that's what this is. There is a presentable, rational, reasonable, harmless face of fetish. That is the grooming. Like this is an exercise in grooming, and by the look on Rory's face, he's loving every minute of it.
My 15-year-old self was incredibly lucky in so many ways. I was lucky in the community that I was born and raised in Wilmington, Delaware. I was lucky to be born into an amazing family. I lucked out in the parent lottery. I went to an amazing school.
Private, expensive.
An art school, actually. And at that point, at 15, I had started getting involved in politics. I was pretty insufferable, is the long and short of it. But I was involved in politics because the sort of first rule in politics is you're supposed to pretend like you wake up one morning, fall out of bed, and find yourself in elected office. You're not supposed to share that you had an interest in politics before you got into it. But I'm
letting you listen to this, which I normally would cut, but we're listening to this because he sort of weaves this into he'd always known. And I'm going to say, like I do to all these men,
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
lay it all out on the table. I was really involved in politics. I didn't know whether I'd run for office or not, but that interest in politics for me was really rooted in a crisis of hope. I, at 15, was very aware of the fact that there was something about me that other people didn't approve of.
It's such a lie. It's just such a lie.
Very aware of the fact that there was something about me that, while it was buried deep in the closet, would mean that I might not be able to find love, do work that I love, live in a community that I loved.
And also, let's just remember, right? Let's just remember, because sometimes you can listen to this and you can think, oh yeah, well, that must have been what he's talking about is a fetish. So what he's talking about when he says there's something about me, the blah, 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 he is talking about a sexual arousal connected with him wearing women's clothes and pretending to be a woman. So let's just be really, really clear. Let's just remember that a fetish is an all-consuming thing. And so when men talk about it and clearly sanitize what it is, because he's not going to say I'm like masturbated myself into near blindness, he's going to talk about it like a hardship, like an extraordinary kind of couldn't live under this anymore. And what that actually is a fetish. And fetishes can be all sorts of things. And in his case, it's a fetish of probably having breasts, wearing women's clothes, and walking about pretending to be a woman.
And the reason why I got involved in politics was because I found hope in it. I found hope in politics as...
So this is a man that was extraordinarily privileged from quite a wealthy family, as I understand it, happy to be corrected. A wealthy family, private school, well-connected, and he just felt so devastated because he couldn't dress up as a woman.
A means to make this world kinder and more just and more inclusive.
And Rory said, you're 15-year-old.
So really? So let's take him at his word, right? This is going to take a long time, I feel, because I'm probably going to interrupt too much. Let's take him at his word. His word is inclusive. So discount everything else, like fair and just and inclusive, and I'm hiding this thing. So we could, and I would, because we know what a fetish is like. It's all consuming. It will shape your entire existence. Remember that pedophilia is a fetish. And if we look at pedophilia and men that then construct their whole lives in order to gain access to children, I think it is quite reasonable to extrapolate that a man will reorganize his entire life to push his fetish. And actually, what you can do with your your super fetish, is you can then push that onto other people, and you can live out so many fantasies on a daily basis of eradicating women's rights and pushing yourself into all women's spaces.
Sure, but what age were you when those feelings started and you started to feel something that you felt you couldn't communicate to other people?
For as long as I can remember.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Right.
My earliest memories are of knowing who I am and knowing that the
lie detector determined that was a lie.
world didn't see me as that. I don't know what makes me trans. I don't know why I am trans. There is a lot of research out there.
Porn, fetish, porn.
That really does show it's something that might happen when you're still a fetus in utero.
Bollocks.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
There is no evidence to suggest that there is anything actually real about pretending to be the opposite sex. There's no evidence in biology. There is no evidence in psychology. There is no evidence whatsoever in why somebody would do that, besides they've made a choice. They have a fetish. Maybe they've watched too much porn, whatever it is. But there is no evidence whatsoever to suggest it's in early childhood. Nothing. Zero. Nothing.
I don't know why I am the way I am, but I know it's who I've been all my life. And
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
I think that the challenge, I will just say, in this conversation is that, unlike sexual orientation, where most people know what it feels like to love and to lust, straight people are able to enter into conversations around gay rights with an analogous experience. And the challenge for people who aren't trans is that they don't have an analogous experience to what it feels like to be trans and in the closet.
So normal people don't know what it's like to pretend to be the opposite sex. Therefore, they don't know what it's like to pretend to be the opposite sex. And I would argue, just using his logic, that men who pretend to be women have no idea of what it feels like to be a woman. So therefore, they cannot possibly know what it is like to be a woman. Therefore, they are not women, because guess what? They're not women.
This episode is brought to you by
Leading. That's ISS.
only and cannot be used in. Explain in simple language to somebody who wasn't familiar with what it means to be trans. In very simple terms, what's your...
Very simple terms. Explain to me what it means to be trans, to pretend.
Any American would be naive not to be scared and to worry that...
How I did.
Explain in simple language to somebody who wasn't familiar with what it means to be trans. In very simple terms, what you're saying about yourself.
Do you mean what it means to be trans, or what it feels like to be trans?
I think that, I mean, maybe this is just me, but I think a lot of people are profoundly confused.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of people hadn't really heard much about trans people. Certainly in Britain, people are confused.
Yeah, you hear nothing about them. You never hear anyone talking about blokes in dresses. Never.
Confused about gender identities. They don't know whether what you're saying is that you were biologically originally a man and then became a woman, or, I mean, so could you explain sort of simply to listeners what it was?
For me, when I was born, based on my exterior body, the doctors, my parents...
Based on your whole body, not exterior, whole body. He's a man! What the doctor said.
Everyone said, you're assigned male at birth, you're...
No, they said, this is a boy. Nobody said, I'm assigning this ambiguous humanoid, I'm assigning this sex. What they said is, oh, hello, Mr. and Mrs. McBride, congratulations, a baby boy. That's probably what they said.
A boy. And for 99% of people, if not more, those things do align. We do know, as trans people have existed throughout time, throughout cultures, that there are a small number of people for whom that inner sense of their gender differs from that sex.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Sex assigned at birth. And that discordance between gender identity and sex causes what is called gender dysphoria.
You all know, I don't need to keep telling you that there is no such thing as gender identity. There is not. It's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It is a socially constructed, kind of trendy, mental, crazy thing. For most men, including Mr. McBride, it is a fetish. And we know that fetishes can do really weird things. Let me just remind you, there are men that go and masturbate in a slurry pit because that's their fetish. And if they don't have access to that slurry pit, they may burn the barn down, which is something that's actually happened. If men can have a fetish of voyeurism, that means they might go to your local swimming pool and drill little holes so they can spy on you when you're getting changed. May I remind you that some men have disgusting, depraved fetishes of wanting to watch other men's wives be sexually assaulted whilst they're comatose or asleep. Men might have a fetish of fucking an open wound. They might have a fetish of women with cancer and having sex with women whilst they're hooked up to chemo. I mean, the list of fetishes is long, and what somebody will do in order to satisfy their fetish is insane. So never, never, never think, oh, it's not a fetish no one would commit to. They would. Whatever you think is totally irrational and reasonable madness, that's perfectly legitimate when you're talking about fetish.
And I think the biggest challenge for folks, yes, sort of understanding that there is something that is different from our sex that we feel is.
They're just so interested, aren't they? Look at the boys. Look at the lads. Wow, this is so insightful and wonderful and rational and reasonable. God, they're just, wow. It's so interesting. It's so interesting.
Gender. When those things match up, you don't feel something. It's only when there is conflict between the two that you really feel that inner pain. And
this is assuming that being a woman is not directly related to your body, which I would argue that is the only thing that makes you a woman, is your body. And your body actually informs loads of things. So it's not like all females are programmed exactly the same way with regards to their behaviors and so on. And there will be people that argue that we're blank slate and the only way women behave like this is because we behave like this. And maybe there's some merit to about 20% of the things that we do. But I actually think that if our purpose as female human beings is to procreate and have offspring, I would argue that that very important thing that we do actually shapes far more of our behaviors than you could possibly imagine. And that's why any men LARPing as women are doing so in a kind of a 24-hour cosplay. There is no way that their behaviors and their feelings and everything else is informed by their female anatomy, and therefore it's just patently not true. It's just really odd. It's like saying if a mockingbird or not a mockingbird, if a crow is taught to or copies chickens, that crow knows what it's like to be a chicken. Like that's what this man is.
It's hard to explain what it feels like, but the closest thing that I can compare being trans and in the closet to was this constant feeling of homesickness.
Not belonging where you were.
Exactly. Just this unwavering ache in the pit of my stomach that only would go away when I could be seen and affirmed as myself. And unlike homesickness,
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
which dissipates.
I mean, it's a very, very believable. If you don't know these men and the cover and the dishonesty of these men, what he's saying sounds quite plausible. And I reckon Debbie Hayton said very similar things, not about being homesick, because Debbie Hayton's not American, but David Hayton. But then eventually they come out and they talk about it being a fetish. And this man married a woman who pretended to be a man so they could both kind of narcissistically validate each other in their pretend identities.
It's with time, and as you get used to your new surroundings, it only increased to the point where I remember when I first came out, I realized that
Remember the first two videos I showed you were just 1 year apart.
Everyone else doesn't have their mind cluttered with gender. Everyone else is able to think clearly in ways that I wasn't able to when I was in the closet. It was something I thought about every single waking hour of every
Obsessive fetish.
single day. And only when I came out did that clutter in my mind, did that pain, did that homesickness dissipate.
And you said you were lucky to be in a very loving, caring family, but how did your parents sort of deal with that process as you went through? Did they see your pain? Did they think you were in pain?
I think I hid it really well. I didn't want to disappoint people. I think I hid it well because I knew how lucky I was. But as it grew, that pain started to become more visible to the point where
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
on Christmas Day in 2011, my mom just could tell that there was something that was plaguing me. And she asked me what was wrong. And
Bearing in mind, we just saw a video from 14 years ago, which is what, 2012, when he was campaigning to be president of the student union or university or whatever he was doing. And then 1 year later, he's dressed like that. So I have a measure of this guy, and he's a AGP.
in a fit of courage and ruining Christmas, I told her that I was trans in that moment.
And how did your mum and dad react?
It was really hard for them. I mean, they are loving, progressive people, but they really struggled. They struggled with I think, two things primarily. The first was fear for my future. The second was confusion, exactly what we were talking about. A challenge in understanding what it felt like to be me and sort of being consumed and caught up with that inability to understand.
Rory wants a question. He just said to Alistair, he wants a question.
We obviously touch on this issue occasionally in the podcast, and there's a very, very large number of people who reach out to us who feel that we don't understand this issue. There's in particular some feminists in the UK who can be very angry with our stance, of whom J.K. Rowling is a kind of famous example. What do you understand of their position and how you talk to them?
Now, get for this. Get ready for this. And it's a really, really, he's very, very good at this. I will give him that. He's really good at this. So I just want you to remember that he had to be told not to use women-only spaces in Congress, like around Capitol. He had to be told not to do that. And listen to what he says. I think he is just very manipulative, but also quite talented at being very manipulative. Just watch this.
Explain your position and where you differ.
Well, my understanding of their position is one, that they reject the sort of distinction between gender identity and sex.
Actually, you would be wrong, because there are some women on this side who think that there is something called gender and sex. And I don't know that all of them, because some of them will be women, they think sex is really, really important, but they also think that the way women behave is a socialized thing. So not necessarily linked to our bodies, but they also know that women are treated in the way that we are treated by men because of our bodies. So that's not what I think. I think that our bodies are absolutely 100% connected to how we behave, as well as how we're perceived. But I think there is a I like I just said, my case is that we are very connected to our bodies, and I don't think that most of the way that women behave is actually socialized at all.
And that there are that these two things can be in conflict. And two, that they are then concerned with, from their perspective, the safety and integrity of spaces that are typically reserved for women. And
Let me just hear that again, because he sort of skirts over.
that there are that these two things can be in conflict. And two, that they are then concerned with, from their perspective, the safety and integrity of spaces that are typically reserved for women.
Now, here's a first sleight of hand. So he talks about gender identity and sex, and then he talks about women. So he's no longer talking about sex, right? He's no longer talking about sex. He might go on to that, but right now he sort of said that some women believe, and I'm in his words, some people believe that gender identity and sex are not separate, and some people believe they are. And then he talks about women. So that's a first sleight of hand where these two twats listening to him will be thinking, yeah, it's really fair and reasonable, really fair and reasonable. Yeah, women, like women's space, and obviously, bleh.
And I can't tell someone that they don't feel uncomfortable. I can't.
But what I can do is just go in the space anyway, and it'll be a fuck you to those women who feel uncomfortable. And I don't know which women do feel uncomfortable, so I'm always at risk in making a woman feel uncomfortable when I go in the fucking toilets.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seat.
Tell someone that they should just get over it.
Oh, isn't he so great? Like, oh, she's so considerate and wonderful. Wow. Just that's so reasonable. These fucking women are terrible. Sorry, just Alice's thoughts.
What I can say is a couple of things. The first is that trans people are concerned with safety and privacy.
Yeah, not our safety and privacy. So like, he's not, when he says trans people, he's talking about men. He's talking about men in dresses. And when he says they're concerned about privacy and safety, well, you fuck ours up, mate. You ruin our privacy and safety because you're a man and you come in. And what these morons are failing to see, and it happens all the time, women are not saying, I don't want so-called trans women in women's spaces. I don't want to share with, they're saying, I don't want men in women's spaces. And what we're saying is, Tim McBride is a man. No matter what surgery he's had, no matter what hormones he's taking, no matter how much he grows his brown hair, no matter what, he remains a man. And if you don't lie and you don't pretend that he is anything other than a man, then you understand why women don't want him in our space. It's not about this so-called trans exclusion. It's about excluding men
in private spaces. Trans people are seeking to go about their business, do their business.
Yeah, but in my space. So fuck off. That's what this man is seeking to do.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seat.
Is use a woman's space. And our dignity, comfort, and privacy is something that these three pricks around this table are absolutely willing to discount and erase so that men like Tim McBride can use that space. Now, even if I pretended for a moment that I thought that Tim was a different category of man and actually was some sort of subcategory of women, the fact that it is completely acknowledged by the three pricks at the table, they all acknowledge that Tim McBride using a women's toilet makes some women uncomfortable. And yet, that doesn't give any of them pause to say, well, maybe you shouldn't be in that space then, Tim.
And mind their business. We have had inclusive policies in many states and cities across the United States. You have had, up until recently, fairly inclusive policies.
we, for a very short moment in time, had policies that enabled men to use women's spaces. Now, not law. Law never said they could. There was never a law that said, if you're a man, you can come into a woman's space. Never, never, never. There was a misinterpretation of the law, or a willful misinterpretation, a willful, again, sleight of hand, that told people, there were activist groups that told people that actually the law meant that men could use women's spaces, and that was perfectly legitimate and fine. That was not lawful. None of it. None of it, none of it, none of it.
And there was not a spate of people pretending to be trans going in.
No. There were men going into women's spaces, whether they pretended for reals or pretended for a day. There were men using women's spaces. And actually, Tim, Rory, Alistair, there were loads of women that absolutely hated it. There were loads of women that then felt less safe going into public, supposedly private spaces for women.
Into spaces and abusing anyone. Discomfort alone is not grounds to exclude people.
It fucking is. Right. It absolutely is, because so now he's going to do this thing where women aren't really victims of male violence, and women have never been victims of male violence in public bathrooms, in public bathrooms or any of those places. So he's now going to say that that's not really happened, so it's only a matter of our comfort. But for these poor men in dresses, them using men's spaces is really dangerous. So a man in a woman's space, we're just making a fuss about nothing. A man in a men's space who isn't dressed the same as men, well, that's real danger. And these two simpering Gamps are going to go right along with that.
If it were, then we'd have a long list of people who feel uncomfortable with other kinds of people in spaces where they feel a little bit more vulnerable.
Well, we don't have toilets that are segregated on other things. So other people, I mean, what does he mean? That like tall people, short people, black people, white people, like Chinese people? Is that what he's talking about? Because we don't have toilets that say you can only use this toilet if you're Chinese, or you can only use this toilet if you're a Christian. But we do have toilets and spaces on the basis that men can't be trusted. We have male toilets and female toilets. We have male spaces and female spaces.
Right? Everyone feels a little bit vulnerable in a restroom. But discomfort alone.
Do you think Rory knew then? Do we think by Rory's face that he realized this is fucking shit? Oh, look.
To exclude people. If it were, then we'd have a long list of people who
no tells that are kind of nodding, are there? I'm just wondering.
Feel uncomfortable with other kinds of people in spaces where they feel a little bit more vulnerable. Right? Everyone feels a little bit vulnerable in a.
Well, that's also bullshit, actually. That's why in school toilets, you have toilets just for children, because they do feel vulnerable with adults in their fucking toilets.
Restroom. But discomfort alone cannot be grounds to exclude people. And at the end of the day, trans people exist. Trans people exist. And so the question is, even if you have academic or intellectual disagreements about gender identity and sex, and even if you have questions or concerns, at the end of the day, we have to decide, how do we treat people who exist? How do we guarantee that they too can fully participate in life? Because
how do we treat people, women, who exist, and girls, women and girls, and how do we treat those people so they can, let me just, let's hear his words again.
We have to decide, how do we treat people who exist?
How do we treat women and girls who exist? Yep.
How do we guarantee that they too can fully participate in life?
How do we guarantee that those women and girls can also, as well as men, participate fully in life?
life. Because the reality is, bathrooms have actually been at the center of every single battle for civil and human rights.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seat.
Certainly in our country, probably in your country.
Yes, because, right, I don't think we ever had segregated public toilets, actually, for people of different races. I don't think we did in this country. Happy to be corrected, as always. But we did have something called the urinary lease, which was because we didn't have public toilets for women, because why would women need to go out and use a toilet? So we didn't have public toilets for women. And so women had to campaign to get them so they could actually leave their houses. So, and now what you've said, Tim, is that those spaces are no longer now just for women, and now we have to share with men again, aren't you? That's what you're saying.
Part because if you can't use restrooms with ease and safety,
if women can't use their restrooms without thinking that there's going to be a man in them with ease and safety, yep, carry on,
then it becomes very difficult to leave your home.
Yes, for women and girls, knowing that there might be a man in your toilets, no matter how he's dressed. And actually, I would argue that if there's a man in the toilets dressed as a woman, I would say that he feels less safe than if there was just a regular man in there. Because a regular man in there, you can say to that man, get the fuck out of the toilets, and everyone else acknowledges, everyone walking past, every blah, 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 blah. They will acknowledge that that person shouldn't be in there. And what you've done is you've eroded those boundaries so that women have no way to object to men in their spaces.
To go to work, to get goods and services.
What goods and services do you need that is dependent on your biological sex? Like, what goods and services? Like, aside from waxing your balls, these are.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
It becomes very difficult to participate in public life. And so trans people are here. There might be some people who are uncomfortable if they know when I'm in a restroom, but there are also who are women, and there also might be men who would be uncomfortable if I was in the restroom.
Yeah, but no one gives a fuck about you going in to a toilet.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seat.
Nobody cares about you going in a men's toilet. The way that men feel uncomfortable because you're a dick and you're dressed ridiculously, the way men feel uncomfortable is not remotely the same as the way women feel uncomfortable with you in their space. And the fact that you three men are talking about this and not acknowledging that actually the way a woman feels with a man in her space is really quite significant is enraging and not surprising.
With them as well. There's going to be discomfort for some people. The question is, does that mean that we...
The question is who? The question is, who is it okay to make feel uncomfortable? That's the question.
We essentially create an environment where trans people can't use one restroom and, quite frankly, are put at very legitimate risk of not only being outed, because
I don't think there's any cases. I don't think there's any cases of a man dressed as a woman going into a men's toilet and facing any sort of violence or threats. I don't think there is. I don't think there is at all.
If you're a trans person in a men's restroom, it pretty much outs you. A trans woman in a men's restroom, it pretty much...
You're already outed. Look at the size of your face.
Outs you. But it can also put you as well at very legitimate real risk of a...
Yeah. And you and men, other men, dressed as women in women's spaces, puts us at risk. And you're willing to forgo our safety just in case you get outed. Nobody thinks... None of you fuckers pass. None of you.
Assault, and we actually know that happens. And then finally, stepping back, do we want an environment where we are playing gender police with restrooms?
Yes. And now here comes another.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Here comes another lie.
I'll give you one example. I got into Congress. We'll probably talk more about this. Mm-hmm. They banned trans people from restrooms.
They banned men from women's restrooms.
Restrooms in Congress.
In Congress.
Just on that, because in their eyes, you're at this stage neither a man nor a woman. What's the...
No, he's a man. Jesus Christ.
I think they would say I should go to the men's room. I do have a private restroom in my office a ways away from the Capitol.
Right.
In the Capitol, the only public restrooms that are available are multi-stall, gender-specific restrooms, unless you have a private office, and I'm not senior enough to have a private office in the Capitol.
But the concept of these are Trump Republicans who've passed this? Or
Yes. I came in.
Their concept is that you're a man and you should use the male restroom, despite the fact you are a woman and you dress like a woman.
Not a woman.
And all this kind of stuff.
I would cause a lot of much more disruption in the men's restroom than I would in the women's restroom.
Honestly, where does this idea come from? I mean, maybe he knows because he is a man, but where does this idea come from that that's like saying a scraggy fox is more at risk amongst other foxes than he poses a risk to the fucking chickens in the hen house.
Which I use without incident for my entire adult life. But
yeah, so then he freely admits.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seat.
He freely admits that what he does is he consistently infringes upon the boundaries of women. He totally invades our spaces all the time. He has no respect. He said that he knows that we're uncomfortable, that some women are uncomfortable. He knows that, and he still does it. So this is it, right? This is, I'm so reasonable. I'm so nice. I'm reasonable. And, I know that some women are very uncomfortable, and I know that, they fear for their safety. And I know that that's really, uncomfortable for them and discomfort and blah, 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 blah. But I'm going to do it anyway. That's kind of he's so reasonably invading our spaces and ignoring our discomfort and not giving a shit about our feelings. He's so reasonable. He's such a nice guy.
They have banned me. There was an incident in February of last year where a MAGA member of Congress named Lauren Boebert went into the women's restroom right off the floor of the House of Representatives, and she saw a freshman Democrat with shoulder-length hair and glasses in the restroom, and she started to harass her and started to scream at her, "You don't belong in here."
Thinking it was you.
Well, the freshman Democrat was bewildered, continued to go about her business. Lauren Boebert went onto the floor of the House of Representatives to secure the backup of Congress's top bathroom sheriff, a woman named Nancy Mace.
Top bathroom sheriff, can I just say, victim of rape, victim of male sexual violence, which informs her about why boundaries are so important. I'm pretty sure she probably knew anyway. But the reason she is really concerned about this issue, and the thing that she talks about, which makes her really concerned about this issue, although I am going to say the way she speaks about this issue, I'm pretty sure whether or not she had been a victim of rape, that she would be right on this topic. So to call her a bathroom sheriff is such a nasty little shitty thing to do.
They come off the floor of the House of Representatives, march into the bathroom, and sheepishly walk out a couple of minutes later, realizing indeed that this freshman Democrat with shoulder-length hair was not me.
And if, Tim, and boys, lads, you men had never invaded women-owned spaces, and you'd never used our toilets, we would not be thinking that somebody who looked a little bit blokey might be a man in our space, because we would trust the fact that we were in a women-only space and therefore it was only women in there. And so that's what you've done by consistently invading our spaces.
I use public toilets and I piss on the seat.
By consistently using our spaces, you have made women really, really rather paranoid, because we can no longer guarantee that women-only space is just for women.
The people who are most often victims of gender policing in restrooms are non-transgender women who are
Women! We are just women.
Gender conforming, women who have short hair, women who are taller, women.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Who have a more muscular build, women who don't wear makeup, women.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
Women who dress in a more gender non-conforming way. Those are typically the victims of gender policing. And so
the lie detector determined that was a lie.
You just have to grapple with this diversity and maybe just allow one another to live and express. And if someone does something wrong in the restroom, punish them for that behavior.
Yeah, you going in there would be wrong. So let's punish you for that behavior.
So I said at the start, you probably get fed up being introduced as the first transgender woman in Congress, and you may be getting fed up already about the fact that we're still talking about it.
Well, that's why I insulted you both at the start.
Yeah, that was really the right way to get the right foot. But it is so interesting because it's so much about the way that politics has developed. Because as you said earlier, there have been trans people through time. I was with Tony Blair earlier today, and I said we were coming to see you and we were talking about you. And I was recalling, I think the first trans person that I worked with was a woman, Christine, who worked for Tony in Sedgefield when he was a young MP. Sedgefield, working class area.
I'm beginning to see Rory as maybe, I don't know, is he as on board as he says? Is he? Don't know. Don't think so. Just don't know. There's something about it. Alistair's fully on board, as long as he can piss off some women, and he's probably giddy with excitement. He's got very small feet for such a large man. In fact, McBride's feet look a little bit bigger. But Rory, his smile doesn't really feel so genuine, does it?
Area, mining community, and it was just not a deal.
Look, right, let me just tell you why I said that, and now he's just proven me right. Watch his smile. Watch Rory's smile. Just watch.
Tony in Sedgefield when he was a young MP.
That's not a real smile.
Sedgefield.
Now just keep watching that smile and watch how quickly it disappears.
Working class area, mining community, and it was just not a deal.
What was that?
So what has happened that has made it such a deal? And do you see it as something that has been deliberately politically weaponized? And how thereby do you manage to retain your disagree agreeably, don't fight too hard, be reasonable, try to understand the other point of view?
Shall I tell you why? I'll tell you why. It's gone like that because we had the 2004 Gender Recognition Act, and it's gone like that because what Obama started doing is starting eroding what it meant to be a woman in about 2009, as did Macron in 2009. So it was a global push. There was also massive organizations funding this global push, and there's pharmaceuticals. So all these things kind of came together all at the same time, like the late 1990s, early 2000s, started really pushing this idea of erasing what it meant to be a woman and trying to erase these kind of foundational boundaries between human beings. So families are sort of being decimated, what it means to be a nation, what it means to have biological sex, like all these things are up for grabs. Some might call it Marxism. All of these things are up for grabs, and you can, if you kind of flatten everything and ruin everything, then you can build up, and you can, if you're a psychotic billionaire, you can foresee this world in front of you that doesn't have any boundaries, no borders, no boundaries, etc. And then you can have some serfs and some masters, right? So that's kind of the general principle. Now, what's happened after that is loads of men, we had the explosion of porn, we had more men identifying like this, and more men sort of pushed, this narrative pushed in porn and on the television. And then all of a sudden, more and more men were in our spaces, they were in our Olympics, they were in our sports, and women woke the fuck up. That's what happened. We all woke up to the idea that we are supposed to not just say, we will tolerate this stupid man in his silly clothes looking like a prostitute or an elderly woman. We'll put up with that. And the next minute, we're expected to pretend that those men are exactly the same as women. So what really happened with the transgender thing is you just pushed it too far. And then women, we're just not having it. And you began to punish us for saying that we're not having it.
Sorry, there's a lot in that question.
Yeah, so there's no question that this is being weaponized. There is a big difference between people with genuine questions or genuine concerns that are coming to this conversation in good faith and those who are acting in bad faith.
I am in bad faith. I don't want to understand anything more about this whole topic. I just want those men out of women-only spaces, and I want it to be shameful. I want us to return to shame that a man that transgresses those particular boundaries is punished profusely.
Who are very clearly trying to take a vulnerable community, regardless of whether you think their gender identity is valid or not. Trans people have been, when I was growing up, the only examples I had were punchlines in a comedy or dead bodies in a drama, right? And
in porn.
They are trying to take that community and score political points on their backs. One, I think that when gay rights hit a certain level of public support and
so I don't know if this is useful to us, because he basically talks now about what he thinks, and it's like massive Darvo. So what he thinks is that what he says he thinks is that after gay rights, people were really, really angry, so they went after trans. What I think is after gay rights, the gay rights lobby realized that the money was going to dry up, and so they started promoting trans. I'm not sure that it's really useful to talk
in our society, any kind of gender progress. I think they are telling a lot of young men who I think rightfully feel like there is not opportunity before them, that the immigrants are to blame or women are to blame. And I think trans people are at sort of the tip of the spear.
Oh, yeah. You're really the canaries in the coal mine for women's rights, just not in the way that you think. What you are at the head of the spear is you're the thing that's actually destroying women's rights, because if you are included in women's rights, they're not women's rights. Therefore, you obliterate the very existence of women's rights once anybody considers you women.
Of conversations around gender that are actually much larger. The bigger iceberg under that is the cultural regression around women's rights, period, and gender equality, period, where we now...
Oh, he basically just blames MAGA for all of this and claims and just then aligns the trans rights with women's rights, which simply means no women's rights.
See young men at historic lows in support of the proposition that women deserve equal pay for equal
This has got nothing to do with you, mate, because you're not a woman.
Work, and women deserve the same opportunities as men.
We will obviously transition on to the many, many other interesting things I want to talk to you. Exactly. No pun intended. But I just wanted to sort of wrap up by saying, is it something that you find a little bit irritating that people spend the first 20 minutes of an interview talking about, or is it something that actually you think you have a very unique role in doing? And does that change through your political career? I mean, what is your sense on how much you're an advocate for this issue and how much you're other things?
I think it will inevitably change over the course of my political career. I didn't run for office to be known for my election. I ran for office to be known for what I do for my constituents. I ran for office to focus on the issues that I ran on and that I know my constituents are concerned with, the issues that I am spending my time in Congress working on, issues from healthcare to paid family and medical leave to childcare to foreign policy. And so I believe over time that this conversation will evolve, that the way people talk about me will evolve. But I also understand I'm not naive to the moment that I have entered Congress in. I'm not naive to the curiosity that people have.
Not curious. We just think you're a man.
I'm not naive to the fact that when you are a first, that will be at the start something that people want to talk about.
And you're playing a leadership role in that.
And I think there is actually a lot we can learn about some of the larger problems that we face in our democracy, in coalition building, with this issue as a case study. Because I do think, and you touched on this, like I
said, he's very good. I mean, he's a savvy political operator. They managed to have a conversation with him without touching on the fact that he was at HRC and remains an advocate of mutilating kids. Like, why wouldn't they discuss that if you had him on? Why wouldn't you discuss the very extremes of his side of the debate, which is that a 4-year-old can be trans? That it's all right to cut off the breasts of a healthy 12-year-old girl. Like, why wouldn't you discuss that, boys?
I said, I think we have to be able to make a distinction between people who are entering in good faith and people who are not entering in good faith. And I do think we have to figure out if we...
I don't think any man in his position is entering anything in good faith. Everything he's doing is about getting himself into women's spaces, complete with, unfettered access to womanhood in general and everything that might mean.
Want to, one, affirm that people are more than just what we believe to be their worst position or action. And two, if we want to actually be effective in changing people's hearts and minds, we have to be willing to engage in a dialogue with those folks who enter in good faith, who have questions, in a way that doesn't immediately call them bigots, in a way that doesn't dismiss their concerns or questions as...
You do dismiss their concerns, though. Like, again, he's very good at this. So he does. He says that he knows that women are uncomfortable, but he still goes and uses their spaces because it's fine. And he knows that that's the case. He knows that any single space he goes into, he might make women feel uncomfortable, but their discomfort's not important. Unlike his discomfort of using a men's space. And the way that women feel that men in their space is a risk for them, that's not important. Not in the way that he feels that a men's space might be a risk for him. And that's it's very reasonable. He says it very reasonably. He says all of this. Like, oh, we should build coalitions and, we have to come to an understanding and we don't want to think these people are bigots. And you know that if you keep saying no to him, that he's going to think that you're a bigot. He's going to call you a bigot. He's going to accuse you of being transphobic and terrible. Or a bathroom sheriff.
As completely irrational or hateful in a place that allows us to have a dialogue, because
I think his position is irrational and hateful. I think any man LARPing as women and entering a woman's space at all is irrational and hateful. Really, really hateful. You must really hate women if you think that you have access to their space despite knowing that you make them feel uncomfortable.
Because at the end of the day, that is the only way for us to move the ball forward on this. And it's the only way for us to make progress on any issue is if we maintain our capacity to engage across disagreement.
Which kind of defines the way you do politics. And I want to come on to that. But maybe my final point in this area, and actually leads us into the way you do your politics. I listened to an interview you did on Pod Save America, and you had this really interesting observation. And I'm going to really, really simplify this, but you basically said, Democrat Party is female in our politics, Republican Party is male. I mean, I'm really taking about 10 minutes of your time and putting it into a...
Right, that's enough. That's enough. I think this is probably a very long episode, so I will leave it there. I just thought it was worthwhile really breaking down exactly how men like Sarah McBride managed to get into all of our spaces. Anyway, I'll leave you with this. If you can speak up, if you can keep to the truth, even when men like McBride and the two Gamps are willing to sacrifice your rights, then I promise we will win. If you can keep speaking the truth and getting people around you to listen, then I promise we will win. And do you know why else we're going to win? Well, it's because I never lose.
My name is Takia Khan. I am a tiny man. Sharp suit, cheap grin, wave my hand. Say I love London, that's the plan. I smile wide, I shake your hand. Sell you lies, you understand. Call it love and unity, while I take your liberty. My name is Takia Khan. I am a tiny man, big on power, built on lies. Truth gets lost while I rise. My name is Takia Khan. I am a tiny man. Wave your flag, I'll take your speech. Freedom's gone before you reach. I I say I stand with LGBT, just another mask for me. Dress control as kind and fair, while I strip your voices bare. Inclusion is my disguise. Look too close, you'll see the lies. Every word a careful con, step by step till power's won. My name is Takiyaka. I am a tiny man, big on power, built on lies. Truth gets lost while I rise. My name is Takiyaka. I am a tiny man. Smile bright while I expand something you won't understand. My name is Takiyaka. I am a tiny man. Quiet moves, a careful plan. Take it all while I still can.